Hi, my name is Joe Bartolomeo. I'm an Oregon workers' compensation lawyer. I have offices in Astoria, Oregon and Hillsboro, Oregon. And in today's video, I'm going to go through the independent medical examination, explain what it's all about, what the rules are involving the independent medical examination, why they happen, and what you can do to maximize your claim when you go to the independent medical examination, or probably better, it's probably better to say what you can do to minimize the damage that you can do to your claim when you go to the independent medical examination. And as I go through this, I think you'll have a better idea why I take that approach. So let's get started, and first we'll talk about what happens or what these exams are all about, and then we'll go from there. So basically what happens with an independent medical examination in the workers' compensation context is the insurance company that decides your claim, basically deciding whether they're going to accept the claim, or if they do accept the claim, what kind of benefits they're going to provide you, has the ability to compel or order you to attend the independent medical examination. They are required. If you do not go to the independent medical exam, you could be penalized, you could have your benefits suspended. So they're mandatory. The other thing you should know is there are several different reasons an insurance adjuster may want you to go to an independent medical examination. Usually at the beginning of a claim, right after you file the claim, the purpose of the independent medical examination is to find out or to make a decision about whether your claim is compensable, which is another way of saying, is this going to be accepted or not accepted? Are we going to cover this? The other reason an independent medical examination is ordered is the adjuster is looking to see whether you actually need a certain kind of treatment, like a surgery. It could be a determination or a question about, is this surgery really necessary to treat the injury that you have, or is the surgery really focused on something that is related to the injury in the first place? And then the last or other third reason that I know of for the independent medical exam is to determine what kind of permanent partial disability you have or may have as a result of your injury. And in another video, I talk about all the different benefits with a workers' compensation claim. So just to review, the purpose behind the independent medical exam is either to determine whether to cover the claim, to determine whether to provide a certain benefit, usually medical care, and then to figure out whether you're entitled to the benefit of permanent partial disability. Now, who are these doctors? These doctors are hired by the insurance company to perform these examinations. They are usually retired physicians or physicians who are not as busy with an active medical practice. They're usually repeat performers, and what I mean by that is I see the same independent medical examiners showing up to perform these exams over and over for years. And as a result, we get to know the tendencies of these doctors. Now, a lot of lawyers will tell you in their YouTube videos that there's nothing independent about an independent medical examination. I tend to agree with that, generally speaking, but I think my view is a bit more nuanced. There is a hardcore group of true believer pro-insurance doctors out there, no doubt about it. There are a few, and I emphasize the word few, doctors that do these exams that are pretty objective and fair. I think the rest of them are just conservative. What they're doing, what these doctors are doing, is they're providing an opinion about whether a certain injury caused a certain medical problem, whether activity at work caused a need for medical care. And it's an opinion. And so there are facts that this doctor has in front of them, and they'll make an opinion about whether something is related or not. And reasonable minds can differ about these kinds of things. So these doctors, if they want to be hired again, are going to be a bit more conservative about the way they look at a case. I do remember early on in my career talking with a doctor out-of-state doctor, and they told me they wanted to help with my client's case, and they said, you know, I do independent medical exams, and when I do those, I look at the case with a tough eye. And that doctor was basically telling me that he was paying attention to who's paying him to give an opinion. So that's what you're dealing with. So let's talk a little bit about the rules behind the independent medical examination, and that will give you a better idea of what you're walking into, but also what you can do before the exam and what kind of guidelines there are that are supposedly there to protect you. I wrote this down because I wanted to hit a few points. I didn't want to forget anything, and I might even go to my trusty glasses on this one. But there are certain rules that the insurance company has to follow when they schedule an independent medical exam. The first rule is that the letter goes out, it gives you a notice. You have 10 days. They have to give you at least 10 days notice before they schedule the exam. The other thing is that if the exam is at a location or a time that doesn't work for you, you can object to that. You have 6 days from the date on the letter or the date that you receive the letter. I would always go with the earlier date, the date on the notice letter, to raise objections with the insurance company about the exam. Here are a couple of examples of the objections that you may be able to bring up or raise. I have many clients out on the Oregon coast in Astoria, seaside area. Many of these exams happen in the Portland area, and we might get an exam scheduled in Kaiser or Salem. Well, that's quite a ride. So we will raise that objection, and this is too far away, the location. And the adjusters will usually work with us to accommodate our client, and we're okay to go into Portland. Another common objection is an examination that's scheduled for 8 o'clock in the morning for a client who lives 2 or 3 hours away. We will raise that objection, and the adjusters will usually reschedule the examination for the late morning or the early afternoon. Sometimes the exams will occur over a 2-day period, and we will raise the objection of, not really an objection, but we will make sure that our client is given lodging so that they don't have to come back and then go back the next day. Those are the kind of issues that you can bring up with the adjuster, and my advice to you is to bring it up immediately, and in most cases the adjuster will comply or work with you. If they don't, you can then go to the state of Oregon and have them resolve it. Once in a while, we'll have a client with transportation problems, and what we have seen the adjusters do is hire a ride service or even a taxi to get them to and from the examination. It happens all the time. So that is the first rule, is that you can object to the circumstances or conditions of the exam if it's going to be a hardship for you to attend. The other kinds of rules that I like to go over, travel. If you do end up traveling to the exam any great distance, you can get your mileage reimbursed. If you have to buy something to eat during the exam, or not during the exam, but on the day of the exam, if you're having to travel, you can apply for and get reimbursed for meals. Now, there are limits to how much money you can get. There's a per mile limit on mileage, and there's a dollar limit on meals, but you can get reimbursed for those kinds of expenses. If you're missing work and you're not on time loss, you can be reimbursed for your lost time at work. So those are a few of the rules, but here are a couple of others. You can have somebody observe the exam. You could possibly have the exam recorded. There are exceptions if there's a psychological type exam or some kind of they call it a neuropsychological testing, things like that. But there are provisions in the rules that allow you to have somebody observe or have the exam recorded. Now, the physician who's conducting the exam may refuse, and then the adjuster would have to have the exam rescheduled. So, and if you're going to make any of these requests, you do it right away. Just like requesting mileage or travel or lodging or anything like that, you should do it right away. So those are a few examples of the different rules that govern the exams. Let me take a peek and see if there's anything else. Here's one I think that you should know about. The doctor who conducts the exam cannot do any kind of invasive testing. What we mean by invasive testing is a needle or something that penetrates your skin. For example, if you're being tested for a radiculopathy, which is pain coming from your neck going down into your arm, the kind of test that may be used is a nerve conduction study. And when they do nerve conduction studies, they put little needles in you. Or another example would be injecting dye to do an arthrogram or an MRI with arthrogram or dye study. That is not allowed unless you consent to it. So no invasive testing is permitted. If the doctor asks you to sign a waiver of any liability, that's not allowed either. So you have certain rights when you go to these independent medical examinations. But what I want to do in the next part of this video is talk to you about the realities of the independent medical examination and what you can do to minimize any harm to your claim when you attend this examination. So let's get to that. So we've talked a little bit about who does these exams, who the people are that do these exams, and we talked a little bit about the rules that apply to the independent medical exam, and we've even talked about why these exams occur. So let's get to some practical tips about how to get through the independent medical examination. Now, some of you watching this video may have an attorney involved with your claim, and you certainly want to follow the advice of your attorney. What I'm going to give you now is a little bit of a sample of what I tell my own clients. In addition to telling my clients about the ground rules with the examination, here are a few tips that I give. And really it boils down to one main thing. The philosophy that I have, the mindset going into these exams, is that I recognize that my client is at the mercy, to a certain extent, is at the mercy of the examining doctor. What I mean by that is you could stand on your head, you could jump up and down. There are a lot of things you could try to do to convince the doctor that your claim should be accepted or that you actually suffered an on-the-job injury. You have to accept the fact, and it took me a while to, you have to accept the fact that this doctor is going to give an opinion, and there's really not much that you can do to persuade this doctor to provide an opinion favorable to your case. It's just not going to happen. However, what you can do is when you go to these exams, you can do it in a way or go into the exam with a goal of not doing any further harm to your case. And this is what I mean. The worst thing that you can do when you go into the examination is give less than full effort. You have to give full effort, you have to be honest, you have to be polite, you have to do everything you can to take away that doctor's ability to tell the adjuster that you're not being upfront with your symptoms, that you're not giving full effort, because then what you're doing is you're creating a credibility problem so that when you go to a hearing, if the claim gets denied, the judge is going to scratch their head about whether they should believe what you're telling them because there's some doctor out there saying that you're not being upfront. Keep in mind that the doctor doing or performing this exam has all of your medical records, has statements that you have provided. They may even have surveillance video of you. So it's important, it's critical that you give good voluntary effort, that you respond honestly to all questions. And you shouldn't worry about the outcome of the exam or how the answers to the questions you give could negatively impact your claim. You need to be honest. You need to give good full effort. Here are a couple of tricks that the doctors will employ. They will do a test measuring your range of motion. For example, in a neck injury claim, they're going to measure rotation. That's the side-by-side motion. And they'll measure it. They have a device called a goniometer that measures the degrees that you can turn your neck in either direction. Then later on in the examination, they may pretend that they're testing for something else, and they'll have you turn your head. And if they notice a discrepancy between the amount that you could move your head one time during the exam as opposed to a later time during the exam, they're going to make a note of that, and they're going to imply that you're not giving good effort. These are called distraction tests, and they do them all the time. Another example quickly would be the Waddell's test, where they have you maybe turn your head or somehow they press on your head, and if you give a response that you're in pain, they're going to imply that you're not giving good full effort, or that your symptoms are due to some other cause. And they have a throwaway term called functional overlay, which is a fancy way of saying it's in your head, or you're exaggerating, or you're doing this to get money. So you have to be careful about the testing that's done, and the best thing that you can do is give good voluntary effort throughout the examination. That's the main thing. Another tip that I would give is make note of the amount of time that was actually spent in the examination. Some of my clients will jot down a few notes about how long they were actually with the doctor, what the interaction was like. Another tip that I give to my clients is, no matter how rude and aggressive the doctor is, you need to maintain your calm. You need to let it run off of you. You need to just be cool. Don't get angry, don't get confrontational. Let the doctor be a jerk if they're a jerk. You don't see that as much as you used to, but that's really important. Another tip, the moment you walk into the door, you are being observed. I've seen reports where the doctor comments that the client was able to move about freely in the exam room, didn't have any trouble getting on and off of the exam table, but then when they were tested, all of a sudden, things went south as far as what they were able to do and not do. So just be aware that the physician is observing you all of the time. I have been at an independent medical exam. It's not allowed so much in Oregon, but in Washington, I know for sure that my client was being observed from another room through some kind of a, peephole practically, or a glass window or something, because I saw the adjuster come into the exam office, and I know that she was being watched. And so you need to be aware that you're being watched the whole time that you are there. Now, what happens after the exam is the doctor will dictate a report. A lot of these reports are already written before you even come in, because these IME facilities are actually booking agents where they connect adjusters with doctors, and they have a staff that will go through the medical records and put the summary together and write up the report. And then the doctor will give an opinion in that report. And like I said, when I look at a usual suspect doctor, they have the same language in their report over and over and over again to justify their opinion. So that happens. The report should come out within 2 weeks or 14 days after the exam, or after the doctor writes up the exam. You can get a copy of that report. So that's the independent medical exam. Those are my tips. Now, your doctor on the workers' comp claim may get a copy of that report, and they may be asked to comment on it. Sometimes the adjuster will intentionally not ask your doctor to comment on the report because it may get in the way of a claim denial. They don't want to create evidence that supports your claim. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have questions, you can contact us. We have a contact icon on our website. You can send us a note. You can call us. We also have a free ebook that you can download called Navigating the Oregon Workers' Compensation Maze. It's free. There's no obligation. We don't give out your information or anything like that. That contains a lot of information about the whole claim process, and it can answer any other questions you have. But again, give us a call if you have questions. If we're not able to help you, we can put you in contact with somebody who can, or at least get you pointed in the right direction. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.